tried the 5.2 diet, I've tried Weight Watchers, I've tried low carb, and now I'm doing one called 17-day diet.
What's that?
So basically you do 3 cycles of 17 days. The first cycle is non-carbs, and it's just basically fish, meat and salads and vegetables for 17 days. Probiotics like yogurt and Yoplait, and I'm more conscious about it, yeah. So I try not eat carbs, because I'm a carb lover.
I mean, eventually you get to a weight where you maintain and then balance your calories to your body weight. So if you understand what that means, it works, doesn't it? Like in principle, shouldn't it work? Like scientifically, shouldn't it work?
I've done a soup diet.
And what was that?
It was cabbage soup, and you eat it for 7 days, and I lasted 1 day.
Why is that, do you think?
I drove past Burger King.
I actually have not ever dieted. I don't have the discipline to stick to one, and also I'm a bit concerned. I don't want to get into an unhealthy relationship with food by starting to restrict myself or restrict certain foods, because I feel like I could easily slip into that kind of mindset, so I've just kind of tried to stay away from it a bit, yeah.
Kia ora, I'm Sasha Borissenko and welcome to Chewing the Facts. In this series, I hope to untangle some of the science, history, assumptions and forces behind fatness in Aotearoa. Could everything we know about weight be wrong, or at least more complicated? In this episode, I'm going to explore dieting. Does it work? My foray into the dieting world kicked off with the Atkins diet during high school. This was the early noughties fad of no carbs and meat. Meat, and more meat, prescribed by its founder, Dr. Robert C. Atkins. Thanks to the good doctor, my early teen meals were a joyless affair of shaved ham, eggs, buckets of cheese and almonds, but no cashews. It worked until it didn't, and my guts have never recovered. What started off as bartering deals with the devil for a slice of bread would lead to feeling elated at the false sense of achievement. When the joy waned, the terror set in, and so it was. Rinse and repeat. There was the 5-2 diet, where I'd fast for 2 days a week and overcompensate for the rest. Then there was the Scarsdale diet. Half a grapefruit in the morning, a few slices of Vogels, and fish and salad for dinner. The upside? All the coffee and tea I could dream of. What I didn't dream of was what dieting did to my mind, my social life, and my metabolism. And just a warning, this episode discusses eating disorders, and there will be the odd swear word, because, it's hard to talk about diet culture without letting a few slip. My first stop on my journey into the world of diets, shmiets, is my fave partner in crime, the gym.
Who is Les Mills? Les Mills is up before the alarm, building muscles in more than arms, sprinting for trains you're a little bit late for. You're good.
Welcome to Les Mills The Trip. Les Mills The Trip is a fully immersive workout experience that combines a 40-minute multi-peak cycling workout with a journey through digitally created worlds. Some people feel nauseous because of the screen, but I've managed to never vomit. I love it, and the wild and fruity nature of it is absolutely hilarious. While I'm getting stuck into my class, I notice Paul Eagle, former Wellington City Councillor and Deputy Mayor. He's now in his second term as a Labour MP. Late nights, stress, and endless food-filled functions at the big end of town puts Parliament up there with some of our worst obesogenic environments. Still feeling delirious, sweaty, and quite frankly smug from my class, I accosted Paul and asked him to come on the podcast. Incredibly, Paul said yes.
I remember when I entered Parliament, if you looked at a photo of me then than you do now, I was significantly heavier, probably 40 to 45 k's heavier, believe it or not. no one really says, Jesus, you're so fat, because you're on television and you see yourself. And I was aware that once I was hitting over 150 kilograms, I was thinking, this is just not good. I was struggling to cope. I couldn't just turn up and say, right, tomorrow I'm going to be skinny and I'm going to be, and this is how it's all going to work. Because it took a long time to change the way and what I ate and when I ate it, to going, now you're going to have to eat this. So it might be saying, instead of eating chocolate biscuits at 9 o'clock at night after coming home from Parliament, or in that case it'll be about 10:30 at night, it's then saying try and, have no biscuits, or if you do, have them around dinner time or lunchtime. So I had to do quite a bit of mental thinking around my journey with food.
Do you think kind of food and weight rules your life?
It does. It really does. It's a strange thing to admit, to confess to, but it does rule. I mean, it's...
Do you have fears of getting the weight back?
I do. I have to be careful because I do put on weight quick, and I'm often surprised at how quickly it comes back on. Do I go for a binge? I wouldn't call it that, but I might go to a few events and I might, pick at something. I might take a bite of something else or finish off something. And then suddenly, it's very quickly. I think the body is quite sneaky and goes, yay, we'll let the gate open again. So I do have to watch it. I am surprised at how quickly I put on weight.
There's almost a torturous element with food because it's inescapable, right? You may think you've cracked the code, but there's a constant test where you're battling your genetic makeup, physiological responses like hormones, and those brain signals we talked about in episode 2. To confuse matters, since Paul's lost the weight, people make assumptions about him.
And I'm just going to say this, people say, you were so fat before. And so I've always found people weren't shy to tell you that. And the personality that I am, look, I just go with it. But I know others would probably be very upset. People would say that you'd got a spring in your step. That was the other thing. When I'd lost the weight, people were much more like, oh, wow. They connected this thing in their heads around thinner equals more energy. They instantly made that assumption that if you're fitter, then you've got more energy.
The World Health Organization cites one of the causes for the obesity epidemic is the globalization of high-caloric foods and the rise of sedentary lifestyles, meaning working in a desk job. But scratch the surface, and sure, exercise is great for you holistically, but it's fruitless when it comes to weight loss.
Rump, booty, backside, trunk, tuchus, buns. That's right, talking about the butt. Understanding that this body part was made for much more than just looking good in a pair of jeans is going to help you strengthen tone and love you.
We've got our resting metabolism, or metabolic rate, that burns energy while we're sitting. This varies incredibly from person to person. Then there's the energy that's used when food breaks down in the body. Finally, you've got exercise. Studies show going hard at the gym actually only accounts for 20 to 30% of energy use. Studies show walking 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, results in no weight loss. Other studies where exercise has contributed to weight loss included calorie restriction and vigorous exercise. And when I say vigorous exercise, I'm talking running, huffing and puffing exercise. And that's for half an hour, 5 days a week.
I lost 65 pounds.
I have lost 110 pounds.
I lost almost 30 pounds.
Forget boring fitness equipment of the past. Your search is about to end.
Now, step up and stride your way to a leaner, healthier, more attractive body. Faster than you ever thought.
But wait, there's more. The science is out as to whether exercise increases your appetite. Some say it does. Some say it does the opposite. And your body may unconsciously compensate for the energy burned over time. So you could sweat it out at the gym, You feel smug in my case, so instead of taking the stairs like you ordinarily would, you don't do it.
Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
Here's Paul again. After 6 years in Parliament, he's retiring from politics. But there's a silver lining, well, culinary speaking.
I mean, the thing that I will look forward to is not going to so many functions where food is presented. Because for people like me, that is a challenge. I mean, I know most people can go into a room, they'll be serving food and not so much drink and the alcohol. That side's fine. But I look forward to the day where that constant pressure of going, oh, that looks nice. I'll have one, or maybe two. Maybe if I have three, that's about the normal size of what a sausage roll should be.
A 2012 study looked at the rate of energy burned among Hadza people living in Tanzania. The metabolic difference between the 30-odd hunter-gatherers and those living in the West, well, there was none. What was different, though, is they don't live in an obesogenic environment. Remember, that's a place shaped by cheap, convenient and appealing ultra-processed foods. There are barriers to exercise and economic and social pressures that set dieters up to fail, essentially. What also differs here is the exposure to a US $76 billion diet industry.
The diet industry has more than doubled since the 90s, and in 2020, it topped $71 billion. Each year, some 45 million people in the United States go on weight loss programs, and 95% of them fail.
With many gyms closed and the refrigerator just steps away from those working from home for the past year, you're not alone if you gain the quarantine 15. And right now, business is booming for weight loss companies as people get ready to head back out.
Diet industry. Yeah, think about that for a second. A whole industry designed around making dough off your failed attempts to stop eating bread. Here's Sandra Ahmed. She is a PhD in neuroscience and has been a science communicator for the past 15 years.
The other thing that's complicated here is that diets do work in the short term. Many different kinds of diets will cause you to lose some moderate amount of weight. If you look at the literature on weight loss, it's a very rare study that lasts for more than a year. And one could cynically say that that's because the longer your study extends, the less successful your intervention becomes.
A 2018 meta-analysis looking at 29 long-term weight loss studies found more than half of the lost weight was regained within 2 years. By 5 years, more than 80% was regained.
Everyone would like to believe that losing weight is very much easier than it is. In fact, for example, people who are well into what medical science calls the obese range with a BMI of 40 or higher have approximately one chance in 1,300 people to get back into the normal weight range in any given year.
So going for a run and cutting those carbs just doesn't cut it. A 2012 study followed more than 4,000 identical twins aged 16 to 25. Incredibly, the study found going on a diet just once increased the odds of reaching a body mass index, or BMI, classified as overweight. Women who had gone on 2 or more diets were 5 times as likely to be classified as overweight. What's more, as BMI increases, studies show chances of weight loss decreases. The American Journal of Public Health said, for those with a BMI of more than 30, chances of attaining a 5% reduction in body weight was 0.001% for men and 0.01% for women. There's something going on physiologically. Sandra Ahmed explains it more.
So there are 2 main weapons that the brain has to keep you from losing too much weight. One is that you actually become more fuel efficient. You become able to do more work with your muscles using less fuel, which is great if you're starving because there's no food in your area and you need to walk a long distance, say, to find the next patch of berries or whatever it is that you're trying to eat. It is not such great news if you're trying to cut back on the amount of food you're eating in the hopes of losing weight. Because what that means is that not only do you have to cut back the amount of food that you would logically think it would take to lose a certain amount of weight, but then you also have to make additional cuts to compensate for that metabolic suppression that happens as a consequence of getting below your defended range, which is the amount of weight that your brain thinks you should carry.
Whoa. I thought this was called a set point, but now it's called your defended range. So what is this exactly?
It's a range of about 5 or 10 kilos that your brain would like to keep you inside of. So within that range, you can make changes like eating more vegetables and less junk food and move your weight around just exactly the way that internet commenters think all of us should be able to. But once you're outside that range on either end, then the brain's compensatory mechanisms take over and your brain starts fighting against further loss, or to some extent against further gain, but those controls are not as good and they don't last as long. So the other big thing that happens when you lose a lot of weight is you get very much more hungry and your motivation to eat goes through the roof.
The trope goes that dieting wrecks your metabolism. A 2016 study looked at former contestants of US reality TV show The Biggest Loser.
Your current weight is 178 pounds. You lost 168 pounds.
The contestants had significant drops in metabolic rates following the weight loss and had to eat 500 fewer calories a day to compensate. It's just not that simple though.
So we know for certain that if you're below your defended range, that metabolic slowing lasts as long as anybody's been able to measure it, which I think the best controlled study is 6 or 7 years, and probably for the rest of your life. If you have regained the weight and gotten back into your defended range, it is less clear that you necessarily have metabolic slowing. Some people seem to, other people don't. But what does happen pretty reliably if you lose weight and then gain it back and then lose it and gain it back is that your body composition changes and you lose more muscle and gain more fat every time you go through another cycle of dieting, so that you may weigh the same, but your body is no longer the same. So you are made of less muscle and more fat probably than you were when you started this dieting process. It is true that as people get older, their metabolism tends to slow, but that's so confounded by the fact that essentially everybody diets that I don't know if we can say that that's natural.
Could it be that dieting is the problem? Diets slow your metabolism, but the science is out as to whether it can be over forever. This is where exercise comes in. It can help to reduce metabolic slowing. So in that sense, it kind of helps to reduce the rebound weight gain effect. In the same Biggest Loser study, participants who maintained their weight loss after 6 years got 80 minutes of moderate exercise per day, or 35 minutes of going hardcore. But more importantly, exercise is great for the body. It's just not great for weight loss. Studies show it can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, and heart attacks. So it's great for your head, your heart, and your vibe. The problem is, diet and exercise are forever lumped together. Why? It's time to discuss diet culture.
Some of these girls have more to lose than others. The amount will determine how long each girl should continue on the diet. Measurements and a mirror tell the story. As anyone who is overweight knows all too well, excess fat has a way of lodging in spots that spoil the figure.
Diet culture is a system of beliefs that we have in kind of modern Western society where we idealize thinness and food restriction. And we also idealize things like exercise, being at a low weight, where we define thinness as healthy and healthy as thinness, and where we define fat as bad. So that whole system of beliefs, whether it's believing that everyone who's fat eats too much, or anytime you exercise, it's good. All of that is kind of wrapped up in what we call diet culture. Even our messages about body positivity or body liberation and respectful healthcare for all can still be weaponized by diet culture and by companies that are trying to cash in on that body dissatisfaction.
That's Erin Harrop. They're an assistant professor at the University of Denver who specialises in eating disorders and weight stigma. In the book, What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat, Aubrey Gordon defines diet culture as disproportionately benefiting people whose bodies are naturally disposed to be thin, and people with the wealth and privilege to pay the high prices of customised diet foods, personal trainers, weight loss surgery, and more. More on weight loss surgery next in episode 5. In the meantime, here's Erin again on how diet culture got cooked up and baked into society.
I think Protestant and evangelical culture as a whole have a lot of beliefs that feed into diet culture. So whether it's the belief that the body and the body's urges or needs are sinful, or that neglecting your needs or neglecting your body is kind of this ascetic virtue, or that it gets you more in touch with the divine. I think those beliefs absolutely tie into diet culture. And similarly, in terms of work ethic, this idea that I have to work to have value, and that the harder that I work, the better I am, and that I need to create more and more good deeds, more and more productivity in order to be a person that is worthy or living a good life. I think all of those beliefs reinforce disordered eating, reinforce diet culture, and reinforce eating disorders for people who have them.
It makes sense, right? There's the Protestant work ethic, which is a sociological theory where value and virtue are attached to hard work. It's also attached to discipline, frugality, and efficiency. Its foundations are rooted in capitalism. The harder we work, the more money we'll make. Likewise, connections to individual personal choice come in here. Fatness is associated with the 7 deadly sins. Think gluttony and sloth. There's the idea that to be fat is a choice, and if you work hard enough, then one day you'll be thin. It goes hand in hand with diet culture. Yet ironically, corporate greed could also be considered one of the 7 deadly sins, if we're using this same line of logic. But then, you've got the pursuit of thinness, which aligns with the pursuit of wealth, so it doesn't really stick. Instead, the focus on individual pursuit serves as an optimum distraction or a filibuster. Erin explains the harm dieting causes.
Dieting has been named kind of one of the primary risk factors for somebody developing an eating disorder. So we refer to eating disorders as biopsychosocial disorders. So there's biological kind of genetic factors that make people a bit more vulnerable. There's also physical conditions that can make it harder for people to eat and have good digestion and comfort and that kind of thing. Socially, there's definitely some social things like experiences of abuse and trauma, weight-based bullying that are all linked with later disordered eating. There's personality factors in terms of kind of people who are often very over-controlled. So people who have a lot of determination and persistence and distress avoidance, right? Those are folks who often are more likely to develop disordered eating. With bulimia, we also see a lot of risk-taking behaviors often as well. And then there's the social, cultural factors that influence as well. So things like idealizing thin bodies, weight stigma, pathologizing messages that people receive from medical providers and peers and parents about their bodies. And many people who engage even in what we would call maybe socially normative dieting or normal dieting, many of those folks do have kind of impacts on their mental health and their social lives when engaged in the diet and following the diet too. If there's, any feelings of shame, fear, letting oneself down, hopelessness, those types of things.
So where do you draw the line?
At least from my perspective, an eating disorder has to do with when a person experiences some kind of disturbance or obsession in their eating and exercise habits that interferes significantly with them being able to carry out the things that they want to do in their life, whether that's going to school, going to a job, having meaningful social connections, those types of things. Where it can get really tricky is that our culture has lots of what we would call disordered eating behaviors that are really quite normalized, so things like cutting out different foods, being really restrictive about the types of things that you will eat, eating very small amounts of foods or very large amounts of foods, engaging in kind of obsessive counting rituals. So things like counting calories or counting macros, paying a lot of attention to your weight or your size, weighing yourself frequently. But when those get kind of magnified and take over a person's mind and their behaviors, that's when it can get really problematic. And for many people with eating disorders, they say all the time, 90+% of my time is spent thinking about these things or doing things related to it.
This is confronting for so many reasons. Too many personal reasons, quite frankly. I'd hate to think how many hours, days, and years I've wasted counting, tracking, crunching, eating the numbers. I even spent $1,000 whole on hypnosis to try and rid myself of the food torment. Essentially, I paid $1,000 to fall asleep. It's a long story. I regret it deeply. Don't ask. There's the elation you feel when you see results, the failure you feel when you don't. And if dieting often leads to weight gain, there's really harmful issues around what eating disorders might look like. Celia McDonald knows the cycle of virtuous dieter to failure well. She's a 23-year-old actress based in Wellington. I first met Celia last year when I tried and failed to join an adult tap class at the age of 30 plus. Again, don't ask. They were on Sunday nights. Perhaps it's the Catholic schooling that imprinted Sundays as being a day for rest in my guilt-ridden, sinful mind. We'll never know. Celia wrote, directed and performed in a musical theatre play, A Fat Girl's Cry, in March of this year. She started dieting in high school.
It was very difficult to stray away from it, especially when you're hungry and you go, don't think about being hungry, don't think about being hungry, you're not hungry, you're not hungry. But the thing is, your body's telling you, you are hungry. Until eventually you get used to the hunger pains, that they just kind of go away and you go, oh, this is easy. But then the energy goes and you start feeling worse and worse and worse and worse. But you still have that mindset of going, you deserve to feel miserable because you're fat and you need to lose weight. Once you've lost the weight, then you can be happy again. It's basically setting yourself up to fail. I actually made a book with photos of thinspiration and writing quotes from things that people have said to me. Things like, you're ugly, you're weird, you're too tall, you're too wide, you're an elephant, you're a pig, your thighs are too huge that they rub together. So it was a really crazy time.
Celia's relationship with her body, dieting, and how it's been treated by the medical profession has caused her serious harm.
My own doctors, they were encouraging it. They were like talking to my mum about, like, you may want to get on top of this weight issue now before she's an adult and develops more health complications, because my family has a history of type 2 diabetes. So then when I suddenly lost 10 kg within a month from every day after school going to the gym, which was just across the road, for 2 hours after school, then going home and finally eating something for the first time that day, the doctors praised the 10 kg loss. And they were like, oh, that's great, well done. How did you do it? And I would lie and tell them that, like, oh, it's just healthy eating and diet and exercising. And they're like, oh, that's great, just keep it up. When really they didn't notice that the 10 kg was in a month. And Mum took me to doctors saying that she was worried about my food intake because then she started noticing. And but they didn't do anything, because they just kept saying, oh, you don't meet the criteria for someone with anorexia or a restrictive eating disorder, because usually they would have to have a low BMI. I eventually found it as a way to punish myself but also cope with things. It was a way for me to control something, because I felt like my weight was out of control and I wasn't the best at academics, so I turned to food and exercise as something that I could control, and then it became obsessive. And I believe that if I was treated properly and diagnosed properly then, I wouldn't have had all these troubles since. And it would have been easier for me to accept myself and my body growing up from a teenager into an adult. But those thoughts never left because I was never properly treated for it. And so I've had a terrible relationship with food ever since.
Here's eating disorder and weight stigma researcher Erin Harrop again to explain some of the myths around eating disorders and fatness.
We often think that the majority of eating disorder patients are thin. And the statistics that we have from 2020 here in the US is that less than 6% of people with eating disorders were actually underweight. And so, I mean, that's the vast majority, 94% of folks that are in either what we call normal weight or higher weight bodies who are struggling with eating disorders. And relatedly, we also tend to think that eating disorders, if a person is in a higher weight body, that they struggle with binge eating disorder or bulimia. While there are people in higher weight bodies who do struggle with both of those disorders, people also struggle with atypical anorexia, which is basically the stigmatized sister of anorexia nervosa. So people who have all of the same eating disorder behaviors, but their body weight is still higher than the cutoff for anorexia. Many eating disorder patients have this belief that they are not sick enough to get help. I think often we think that a starving body has to be thin, but the reality is that a starving body just needs to be starving and not getting food.
For former National MP, Deputy Speaker and Education Minister Anne Tolley, her experience of dieting was vastly different.
I put on weight after my children, and so I went along to Weight Watchers. Liked the program because it was a pain counting stuff, but it was a balanced diet, and it was where you managed yourself. So some of the other ones where you get meals given to you, or you have a powder, or I've done all of those. My family, we've always had weight problems, and but Weight Watchers was a balanced diet that you managed yourself. You thought about your portion sizes.
This was in the late 80s and early 90s. Anne liked the program so much, she became a Weight Watchers leader and continued to do that for almost 12 years.
When I was doing it, we would have a meeting and people would come in and we'd weigh them and see, whether they'd lost anything during the week, and each individual you'd have a chat to and celebrate if they had a good weight loss or a good week. Sometimes they had a good week, but didn't necessarily lose a lot of weight, but they felt they were really getting on top of it. And then each week there would be a topic that you would talk about. But I did it on and off, and you had to actually maintain your own weight with them. Once you got past a certain tolerance, then you could no longer be a leader.
Did you manage to keep the weight off? I mean, because that's one of the things that's coming up in terms of the research, is that diets don't work, quote unquote.
No, unless we all tend to go on a diet, and when we reach, if we're successful, because not everyone's successful at dieting, but if we're successful and we reach that weight, then we go back to the old ways. And so you put on the weight again. So diets are not good. It's actually focused on, and that's why I liked Weight Watchers. And a number of people that I worked with managed that, because you stop counting calories and points and things, but you know that you go to a smaller plate and you just know, and you manage that for thereon.
Is this something that you've continued since?
as I say, there's still basic things that I learned in Weight Watchers. I've just been away on holiday and relaxed and eaten far too much and sat on a bus for far too long. So I know I go back to, and I deliberately go down a plate size so that I'm reducing my portions and I'm looking at, what mixture I have on my plate. Some of those basics just never go away. Am I the right weight at the moment? No.
For this episode, I seriously pondered who might be the best diet lord to interview. Jenny Craig was a no. Dr. Scarsdale sadly died in a strange circumstance involving a former lover. Weight Watchers was my best bet. They were a no, a yes, a maybe, and then a definitive no. Thankfully, this project has been in the works for more than 5 years, and I interviewed the diet enterprise in 2018 in a dingy flat while I was living in Auckland. Zoom wasn't a thing then, so Soza for the sketchy sound quality. Here's Dr. Gary Foster. He's an adjunct professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also the chief science officer at Weight Watchers. He rejects the claim it could be responsible for laying groundwork for eating disorders.
So anything, we certainly screen out people with eating disorders, and we certainly are attuned to that possibility. The reality of the data, it goes all to definition. You hear a lot in popular press about dieting creates eating disorders. And by dieting, if you mean over-restriction, not eating for a couple of days, excluding whole categories of food, maybe partially, but there are lots of things that create an eating disorder. The data are that in adults especially, if you were going to treat eating disorders, let's say like bulimia or binge eating disorders, anorexia is a different condition in a lot of ways because of its weight criteria. We're not going to see people with anorexia, but the treatment would be largely what we do: eat at regular meals, avoid extremes, eat a variety of foods, eat regularly, and be kind to yourself that your weight is not your worth.
So you decide you're going to buy some stock in Weight Watchers.
No, this is the way it happened. They said, we would like you to come aboard our program and do what you do. Self-empowerment, self-enrichment. We think that you can bring another level to us for Weight Watchers. I said, I can't do it unless I actually go on the program. And as of today, since August 12th, I've lost 15 pounds.
Wow.
Your weight is something that describes you, doesn't define you. So it's very, it's hard for me to believe, although I guess there's always some possibility, and we're on the watch for that the kind of reasonable, behaviorally sound weight management we do, there's no science to suggest that increases the risk of eating disorders. And it's been evaluated, both more restrictive plans, less restrictive plans. I've done some of that work before I came to WW. And while I don't want to minimize eating disorders or their consequences or their seriousness, I think we'd be a very low risk of a reasonable, and I would consider us a reasonable approach to weight management that there's any data to suggest that would increase the risk of eating disorders.
It was around the time of the interview that Weight Watchers rebranded to WW. It now has a holistic philosophy centered on wellness. To be happy is to be healthy, or so the theory goes.
This was an evolution of our brand that started back at the end of 2015 when we were largely solving the problem of weight. And even then, consumers across the globe told us, look, I still want to lose weight, but the days of me eating very restrictively, not eating entire categories of food, just focusing on restriction and not on physical activity, and doing so in a way that I had to leave my life to do it, those days are over. It seemed a little contradictory or inconsistent to say, yeah, we're inspiring healthy habits for everyone, but only if you have to lose weight. So that's where the expansion to wellness went.
I asked Gary whether Weight Watchers was profiting over people's sense of inadequacy. Here's what he had to say.
People or wanting to lose weight that they're inadequate. And I fundamentally disagree with that assumption. I don't think your weight is any indicator of adequacy or inadequacy. It'd be a pretty shallow view of somebody's adequacy. But I'm quite sure it's not measured on the scale.
Sarah Jane Duff disagrees. She's the director and designer of plus-size fashion label Lost and Led Astray. I've known Sarah Jane since 2017, when I started to really question my whole view of dieting and what it means for the fat community. If the goal is to reverse fatness from a dieting or policy perspective, even if it's through the pseudo lens of health, it's quite unique and problematic when you think about discrimination. The goal for any other form of discrimination is not to erase it. You don't eradicate gender, sexual orientation, disability, or people of colour, for example. In this sense, not only can dieting cause physiological or mental harm, but social and political harm. Dieting in its purest form arguably fuels weight stigma. Here's what Sarah Jane has to say.
It's power, greed. Diet culture makes a shit ton of money. Why would you give that up? Like, it's a huge industry. Diet culture, from what I understand, is the one that's done a lot of the science behind bodies and weight and heart things and all that kind of stuff. And because, I mean, who's gonna make money if fat culture or fat phobia is abolished? So who's going to pay for the science to actually disprove what's out there? So it always comes down to money.
We know Weight Watchers conducts its own research, which isn't uncommon or necessarily a bad thing, provided there's plenty of other research out there to balance it out. Like a lot of diet companies, Weight Watchers has been steeped in the odd controversy over the years. It's been associated with weight loss drug companies. It's been criticised for allegedly targeting children. And there were claims last year it illegally gathered kids' information.
Weight loss app for kids. While some parents say it may be a helpful tool, critics, including some nutritionists, say it is a bad idea that only encourages fat shaming. The Weight Watchers app called Kurbo was released last week.
Now, it targets kids as young as 8 years old, and here's how it works. Kids can eat whatever they want, but the app color, it actually uses a color code for food choices like a traffic light would. Veggies and fruits are green choices. Meat and pasta are yellow choices. And of course, candy and soda are red choices. The developers say that it's proven to be a safe way for effective weight loss and responded to any criticism saying, quote, Kurbo by Weight Watchers focuses on behavior change for healthier eating and more activity, not dieting or calorie counting.
Even Heinz, as in ultra-processed ketchup Heinz, the yummy Heinz, owned the company in the 70s up until the 90s.
Tomato ketchup is one of the world's most popular condiments, and it can be found in many households around the world. We have it with burgers, fries, and just about anything that we can think of to complement our meals. Heinz is one of the market leaders in ketchup, selling over 650 million bottles of ketchup around the world every year.
So you've got the rise of diet culture reaching a peak in the last 30 years, which just so happens to coincide with this panic around the obesity epidemic in the 90s. And you've got companies and entire industries clipping the ticket at both ends.
I'm much better at like the intuitive eating, which I think is a really important part of having a nice relationship with your body, that you relearn to eat, you relearn your fullness, you relearn your cravings. Because I used to binge eat a lot and I don't do that anymore. Like I can eat slower. I always crave broccoli. Like, it's just all these things that you have to reteach yourself, because when you're trying to be restrictive, it fucks up your cravings and it fucks up your fullness. So my relationship with my body now is so much better, and I cook all the time, and I enjoy cooking, and I enjoy moving my body, and on my one day off I want to go for a walk in nature, and where before I would often have a mental block about that stuff because it was like, I mean, there's shame in having your body out there doing things, but then it was like, oh, what am I doing it for? Where now I crave the movement for joy.
When you think about it, gyms are intimidating at best. Sarah Jane rejected diet culture, and in doing so, she set up Fat Yoga, an exercise space for all bodies and fitness levels.
I've had to go through this weird phase of not moving my body because there was no space to move my body in a safe space, and therefore a gym, like there's nothing safe about a gym, because that's where you start getting all the problems with disordered eating and bodies and not liking your bodies and all that kind of stuff, because you start thinking your body has to change and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so I went through this journey of I literally was hating on exercise so much I almost had to stop it to then find joy in it again. And so I now have, because I had to figure out how to have joyful movement and what joyful movement looked like to me, rather than what society said this movement I had to do was to lose weight. And so now I move for joyful movement. Like I go for walks with friends, and I now have a much more active life because I've come through that psychological head fuck about not having to lose weight anymore.
I'm Sasha Borissenko, and that was episode 4 of Chewing the Facts. It was written, directed and produced by me. Executive producer was Teresa Cowie from Connect Content. Post-production and sound design was by Oliver Devlin. Theme music by Thomas Lambert, with special thanks to Andrew Laxon, Ethan Sills and many more. Follow Chewing the Facts on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on TikTok and Insta at Chewing the Facts NZ. New episodes are out every Sunday. This podcast was made in collaboration with the New Zealand Herald, with support by New Zealand On Air. Considered controversial for many and impossible to get for others, in the next episode I'll be chewing the facts about weight loss surgery.
So unfortunately, I went in for surgery on the 26th of March 2013, and right from the outset when I woke up, I was vomiting blood. I had a nasal gastric tube, which you have, and you have a drain coming out your side, and so if anyone thinks that surgery is the easy way to lose weight, they really need their head read, because it's not. It's actually pretty brutal.
Thanks so much for listening.